Jen did a recap. I just want to cover a couple things. This quote, no matter, because we do not rest, we lose our way. Poisoned by a hypnotic belief that good things come only through unceasing determination and tireless effort, we can never truly rest, and for want of rest, our lives are in danger. And we talked about this last week. We talked about how we struggle to rest, how we actually struggle to be in silence and solitude with God, and that if we are tired, it just feels like one more thing to do. If we are exhausted, if we are tired, we can't even begin to think about experiencing solitude and silence. And we talked about this. We said, where are you on this continuum? And it's interesting that for most people, as I had conversations afterwards last week, and as I talked to people during the week, for most people, a vast majority, this is where you live. You recognize that you are dangerous tired, or you're drifting towards dangerous tired, or you're fully in a state of dangerous tired. I had one individual message me and said, I've been dangerous tired for 30 years. I had several people after our gathering last week just share that I'm dangerous tired. I had one individual message me and said, Steve, I'm one step past being dangerous tired. And it's something that we need to recognize. It's something that we need to embrace. It's something that we need to surrender to God. And I encouraged you last week to just allow God to speak to you. In these minutes that you're gathering, that it's just you and God, where it's Him and you, and you hear His voice. I encouraged you to pause, pay attention to how you're tired, and simply say this prayer: God, Father, what are we going to do about this? What are we going to do about this? And I would encourage you, I have all kinds of things that I could suggest that you do, but I'm not doing that, because it's individual. And I want you to hear from God. If you still haven't wrestled with that, if you still haven't heard from God how you are going to deal with this tiredness, then I'm going to ask you to continue to press in. I'm going to ask you to continue to hear His voice, continue to listen, and simply pray, what are we going to do about this tiredness? And some people, it might mean a huge shift in your margins, in your calendar. But God will tell you. As we move on today, this quote from Ruth Barton: no matter what state we are in, solitude gives us the opportunity to rest in God. If we are basically rested and energized, solitude helps us maintain this healthy state, which is no small thing in a world that demands so much of us. If we are in a state of good tired, solitude practiced regularly can prevent us from slipping unknowingly into a state of being dangerously tired. If we have identified ourselves as being dangerously tired, solitude within the rhythms of daily life, along with periodic extended times, can help us find our way back to health. But the question is, how do we rest in God? How do we rest in God? Understanding, learning to rest in God in times of solitude and silence will begin with the body. We've talked a bit about that. And I'm going to take some time again today, and we're going to talk about what does it mean to have rest for your body? What does it mean to have rest for your mind? What does it mean to have rest for your soul, for your heart, for your spirit? What does it mean to actually have experiences? As Jen said, we are body, soul, and spirit. What does it mean for us to find rest in this? And again, we've been asking you to kind of look into the story of Elijah. And it's so fascinating to me that when Elijah ran and when he was dangerously tired, he just collapsed. And in this moment, he was ministered to by God. He was given sleep. He was given food for the journey that he had to take. And it's interesting when you take this and think about rest for body, rest for soul, rest for mind. And Elijah experienced this, and I encourage you to keep reading through that story. When it comes to rest for the body, most people do not connect, do not think about our body or caring for our body as part of spiritual practice. And as I said, the story of Elijah confirms that many times this is where it all begins. Think about this. Everything we do engages the body. The spiritual journey takes place in the body. In your body, there is a very real connection between caring for your body and engaging in and deepening our relationships with God. How we actually look after this shell that we exist in. We talked last week about paying attention to how exhausted we are and sitting quietly with God. And again, I'm going to tell you, if you haven't said that prayer, to practice that prayer, Father, this is my reality. What do we do about this? Physically, we have to hear and apply what we hear to change things so that we can get the rest for our bodies. If we are physically exhausted, we cannot engage in the very thing that will breathe life into us, that will sustain us. And there are so many things that we need to take into factor. Question for you, how about stress? How do you carry stress? That's an interesting word, carry stress. I was talking to a good friend of mine this past summer, and he said, I carry my stress in my neck and my shoulders. He said, that's where I carry my stress. I've never even thought of that before. About this term, carrying stress. So many of us carry stress in different ways, and it's amazing if we don't pay attention to this, how we carry it, and recognize that, okay, that's how I deal with stress, and therefore I need to, okay, God, what do we do about this? I mean, as I said, my friend said, I carry my attention, my stress, in my neck and shoulders. Some people carry their stress by sleeping or not sleeping. Some eat, some drink. Have you ever talked to somebody that when they get stressed, they can't stop talking? Have you ever been around one of those? I see people like that, and it just attracts me around them. And they just won't shut up. Because they're stressed and they're just like, just like one thought comes in, another thought comes in. There's several people here as I think about that. I think that's how you carry stress. I'm not going to name names. Some get really, really busy. You carry stress by not stopping. The reason that, you're busy but you get busier, that's how you carry your stress. And we could go on. And the same way as when it comes to our exhaustion, if we don't say to God, okay, this is my reality, what are we going to do about it? The same with our stress that affects the science is out there, we all know, right? We know more than we've ever known before about the effects of stress on our bodies. And if we don't recognize stress in our lives, then how do we manage our physical body? How do we actually rest our bodies to be present with God? And when I think about stress, I'm like the same prayer, Father, what are we going to do about this? When it comes to stress, God, how are we going to deal with this? What are the things that I need to put in place so that when I see stress, and however it shows up in your life, you're aware. And it's amazing how in times of solitude and silence, if you're paying attention, God will start whispering to you, this needs to be dealt with because it takes you to the place of stress, and you carry it however you do. Do you understand that one of God's gifts to you in relation to rest for our bodies is physical exercise? It's incredible, and it is a gift, because physical exercise releases endorphins that soothe our emotions, ease pain, and elevate our mood. Did you know that? That there is that activity of being physically engaged in an activity actually does a great job in just resting our bodies. My wife thinks I'm insane for a number of reasons, but when I'm really tired, I'll go for a run. Because I know that it's a stress thing that I'm tired. It's stress that I'm tired. It's not physical exhaustion. It's not because I was too busy. It's not a good tired. It's because I'm stressed. And there's nothing like a long run to just kind of, after you're done, I feel so energetic, so alive. Because of what's physically happened in my body. The endorphins and just being able to now cope. And some of you have been waiting to hear this, or at least wondering. To be in solitude is not necessary to sit quiet. It is not necessary to just sit quiet. Can I hear an amen? Because some people are like, Steve, do I just have to sit here for 5 minutes? And I haven't answered that question intentionally. Because I think it's good for you to learn to sit for 5 minutes. But that, for most people, for some people, being active not only helps you physically rest, but it's also how you engage in solitude and silence. For some people, it's the way we were created, and I understand this. It's why I can't sit when I speak. I have to be able to move. It is like, there is something about when you're active that God can speak. There's something about when your hands are engaged. Maybe you're going for a walk. Maybe you're going for that jog. Maybe you're on the bicycle. Maybe it's just, a few minutes just to walk around town or like whatever you do. In that you can be solitude. You can be in solitude and silence with God while you're active. And reaping the benefits of actually being active. I know so many people that it seems that when they get into what seems mundane or automatic for them, where they just go on autopilot and they're busy, some people it's gardening, some people it's being involved in something, and then God all of a sudden speaks to them. And my encouragement to you is if that's you and you're sitting there going, oh, thank goodness, I don't have to just sit. Please, when you are engaged in something, be aware of God. If solitude and silence comes from you being active, from you being walking or exercising or doing whatever, please start with the prayer, God, I'm here. And you're here. Speak to me. So that while you're on autopilot, you are attuned to what he wants to talk with you about. But simply put, and so many of us know this, but the problem is, are we applying it? In 1 Corinthians, Paul says this. He says, don't you realize that your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit who lives in you and was given to you by God? You do not belong to yourself, for God bought you with a high price. You must honor God with your body. And this week, I'm going to ask you to be very practical in this. And think about when it comes to rest for your body in solitude and silence. Recognize that physical disciplines, sleep, exercise, diet are integral to solitude. Learning to listen to our bodies, to rest it, to honor it as a place where God lives, makes His presence known to us, is part of our spiritual rhythms. How are you doing with rest for your body? Is it just a machine that goes and goes and goes and goes and goes, and every waking moment is busy? Or are you paying attention to this gift that God has given you and stewarding it? Are you giving rest to your body so that you can be in a place to hear His voice? Rest for our minds. I think this is probably the most significant one for many of us. Even if we can get rest for our bodies, our minds are a different story altogether. I've heard so many people share over the last few weeks, I cannot quieten my mind. I can't stop thinking. Tim, when he shared last week with us, he said he referenced the squirrels, right? Just he tried to focus, and all these things are just going, going, and going. In our world, it is so hard to rest our minds. I love this quote from Ruth Barton. The human mind is perpetually busy trying to control things, trying to figure things out, clinging to the latest idea, grasping at the latest straw. It works very hard trying to make sense of things by endlessly seeking to put everything into categories, endlessly seeking to put everything into categories and boxes and systems and thoughts. Sometimes even God himself gets relegated to a category or a box in our mind, rather than being free to be God in my life. As you think about that, how many find that as your experience? It is just so hard to stop what our minds were created to do. And a lot of that, I believe, we've been conditioned. I love Psalm 131, where it says this. It says, "O Lord, my heart is not lifted up. My eyes are not raised too high. I do not occupy myself with things too great, too marvelous for me." Everybody repeat that with me. I do not occupy myself with things too great, too marvelous for me. What if that was your prayer when you stop to think about solitude and silence and you can't rest your mind and you just say, God, I do not occupy myself with things too great, too marvelous for me. We need to learn how to rest our minds the way that this song describes. We need a place daily where we stop trying to figure everything out, where we stop trying to control through thought, where we stop trying to control through words, even through prayer, where we can just be. I mean, we get this in our human relationships. Thinking about someone is not the same as knowing someone. Think about those that are close to you. If your knowledge of them was only facts, and it's all you knew, and there was no engagement of the heart, there was no engagement in just being present with them, and it was just about think. You're this tall, you're this old, you do this, you do this, you do this. It's just fact. Is that a relationship? You see, this is how we come to God so often. We don't shut the minds down, and it all becomes about what we think and not about who we're with. Jesus underscores this when in the Shema that we talk a lot about here. How many can read just Mark 12, verse 30? What does it say? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your mind, and all your soul. Okay. I think in our North American world, if we'd have written it, it would have said this. You must love the Lord your God with all your mind and all your strength. Because in our culture, that's how we engage life. We have been conditioned to think about everything. We have been conditioned that we have to know and we can know. And it's all about the pursuit of knowledge. It's all about having this grasp around everything. That's how we're taught. We are so mind strong, so head strong, that our precondition is that we think about everything and try to figure it out. It is not lost on me that Jesus said, no, love the Lord your God with all your heart first, with all your soul first, and then your mind, and then your strength. For some of us, being alone with God and being in solitude and silence and learning to shut our minds down is recognizing that there are things that I don't know and I don't need to know because He knows. Amen. There are things that I don't know and don't need to know because He knows. But there are some things that I do need to know. I need to know how much I'm loved, how much grace is given me, how much forgiveness is for me. I need to know about the purpose He has for me, about the calling He has on my life. I need to know those things and lean into those things, have conversations around that because that's intimacy. But oh, we struggle to shut this thing down because of how we've been taught, because of how our world functions. If we are able to notice the difference between what goes on in our minds and what goes on in our heart, we might eventually acknowledge that our mind is tired of trying to hold it all together, figure everything out, and make something happen. How many are tired of mind? How many find themselves just, you're in this place. I actually experience this at times where it's just like, my head hurts because of all that's going on in there. And to be able to pull away and come where it's just God and I'm like, I don't need to think about that. I don't need to think about things that are too marvelous for me. There are some things that I just don't need to understand and be okay with that. There is this piece of that we need to embrace the mystery of God in our lives. The fact that He really is bigger than us. That He really does know more than us. That He really is all-powerful. And then rest in that. I had this conversation with a person in a parking lot a couple of weeks ago, just sharing something they were going through in their family. And just saying, I'm praying, and I'm not getting an answer. I'm like, so rest. Rest. Because He knows. Because He knows. And can you be at peace with that? Can you come to the place where you know that you don't know, but you know the one who knows? And rest in that. It is hard. I'm going to ask you this week to pay attention to how you are engaging life with your mind. Are you able to actually quieten your mind?
Sure.
And I think about this, that, it's not that we stop thinking. Because we're going to be talking about this in a couple of weeks, that we are called to be devoted to teaching, as the early church was. We are called to think. We are called to learn. We are called to engage the mind. But are you able to not engage your mind and just sit in the presence of God? There is a time to engage, but there's also a time to be still. Time to be still and know that He is God. Be still and the knowing comes. Our prayer and our mindset is this, and I've said it already, I don't know, but you know, and that's all I need. Think about the transformation that could come, that will come, if we settle and focus our minds on who God calls us to be. What would happen if you settled your mind on the fact that you are a child of God? You settled your mind on that you are His beloved. You focused your mind on His love, His grace, His forgiveness, His calling, His purpose. What if you settled your mind and said, as the old song goes, Jesus loves me, this I know. That's all we need to know a lot of times. In solitude and silence, rest for the mind means stop wrestling and mindfully receive. In rest for the mind, there is a strength that comes, a peace that comes, where you know you don't know, but you know the one who does. And I've seen that sometimes. From the rest comes the answer. It has been remarkable for me in the last year and a half as I have really started to practice this, what it means to rest my mind, because there are big things that I'm trying to figure out. I'm like, okay, I don't need to know. God, you know where that is for me. And so I rest in that. And what's really crazy is that as I rest in that and then stop trying to think and solve in my own strength and power, a few days, a few weeks, a month later, it happened. And looking back, I go, oh yeah, that's not a problem anymore. Oh yeah, that's starting to work its way out. I did nothing because He did. We are so conditioned to try to figure everything out and be in control. How are you for resting your mind? What about rest for the soul? This, when I think about this, it's the heart, it's our spirit, it's the very core of our being. We are so good at putting on airs, aren't we? When we get in public, nobody sees what's really going on in here. When we're with friends, when we're engaging, we've got our filters. No one really sees or knows what is happening in us. In solitude and silence, we have the ability to come and be just as we are. But you know what I find out? As we think about this, as we engage this, I hear people and I watch people and I've heard in stories that even coming before God, who knows you intimately, there's this mindset, I have to be good enough. I have to have everything together. I have to put on the airs. I have to have the filters. I have to come before God and be okay. It's so exhausting. So exhausting. When what does God require of us? To come as we are. In her book, Solitude and Silence, I love the analogy that Ruth Barton said. She said, life is like musical chairs. And how many have fun playing musical chairs? I love it when adults play. Because when kids play, it can be kind of aggressive, but they're not going to bowl each other over. The last time I played musical chairs, it was a free-for-all. There was I'm pretty sure, I know one person that got hurt. And it's just so much fun because you're just the music goes and you're going, I'm not going to be the last one to sit down. And when that stops, you collapse. Right? That's the last man standing. And it can get pretty violent when you have adults playing. And she talks about this musical chairs, and not about the violent part, but the musical chairs, that's where my mind went. But musical chairs, when the music stops, drop just as you are. What if in life we learned to rest our souls the same way we engage musical chairs? When the music stops, it's who we are in that moment. Because that's what God longs for. That's where we find the rest for our souls that Jesus talks about in Matthew 11. Come to me, all who are weary. I'm humble and gentle of heart, and you will find rest for your souls. And if the music stops and we just sit down and where we are is where we are, and we forget about the pretenses, we forget about trying to be good enough, and we just say, okay, God, right now, life sucks. The music stopped and I don't like it. And be okay with that. Right now, God, I'm angry. Right now, I'm grieving. Right now, God, I don't understand why they are doing this to me. The music stopped, and that's where you were. Oh, right now, God, the music stopped. I'm so grateful. You are doing so many incredible things. You are at work here, my family, my friends. This situation, I'm so grateful for who you are. Rest for the soul, coming to God just as you are. And not trying to pretend. Not trying to make a good day bad or a bad day good. How desperately our souls need regular moments when we rest in God and allow ourselves to be with God with what is most true about us. The point of solitude is to be with God with whatever is true about you right now. Silence then allows us to simply give God access to where we really are. Rest for your body. Rest for your mind. rest for your soul. As we continue this journey through solitude and silence, recognizing that it is hard, recognizing that as we come to God to hear His voice, there is so much resistance. I was chatting with Edward shortly before the service started, just about the resistance of our enemy to engage this. Because he does not want us hearing God's voice. And then all the other externals that fight for this. Alicia's going to come. And what I want you to do now is she's going to lead us. And before I give you your homework for this week, I want you to sit however you need to be quiet in this moment as Alicia leads us. And how are you with rest for your body, rest for your mind, rest for your soul?
I know lockdowns didn't really affect a lot of people, but for me it really stripped back everything. Because I'm a hairdresser, so I couldn't work. I do worship, couldn't go to church. There's a lot of different things that I feel like God used that time in my life to just, okay, without these things, who are you? So that's when I really began songwriting, was during the pandemic, and Worthy was one of the first songs that came out of that. And it's not about identity, and it's not about rest or any of those things, but there's just something about that song that makes me think of that time in my life when I was dangerous, tired, and he had to tell me, okay, Alicia, who are you going to serve today? And I'm just so thankful for him. Yeah, I'm just going to play a little bit, and then this song that I'm going to sing for you is called As I Will Be, and it's just about how God already sees us, how we're going to be when we're in glory. That's how He looks at us every day. And the first verse just says, you call me by name, you tell me I'm known. You call for a change, a constant letting go. And this song is just about the journey of life, like how we're being filled up and poured out, filled up and poured out. Because it's not just like a one-time thing, it's like a constant, okay, I need to let this go because it's holding me back. And I need to be filled with the Holy Spirit to be able to do life well and to love well. So I'm just going to have a few moments of quiet and I'm going to sing it for you. see me as I will be when you've completely transformed me, and you're not finished with what you started. It's all a part of the journey. Fill me up, pour me out, fill me up again. Fill me up, pour me out, fill me up again. Search my heart, God. Reveal the hidden things. Renew my mind, that I may know your love, really know your love. You already see me as I will be when you've completely transformed me, and you're not finished with what you started. It's all a part of the journey. Fill me up, pour me out, fill me up again. Fill me up, pour me out, fill me up again. Fill me up, pour me out, fill me up Fill me up, pour me out, fill me up again. Fill me up, pour me out, fill me up again.
So here's your homework this week. I don't have it in paper because I had internet issues. This week, when it comes for rest for your body, pay attention to your body, pay attention to what God is saying. When you hear from God, pray, what are we going to do about this? Pay attention to how comfortable you are with the idea of caring for your body as a spiritual discipline. When it comes to rest for your mind, are you able to tell the difference between what goes on in the mind and what goes on in the heart? What is it that you need to know in stillness that you haven't been able to know because of noise and busyness? What is the I don't know place in your life that no amount of thinking or wordiness has brought an answer? Can you rest in God's presence with your unanswered question? Pay attention to impatience and frustration. If you feel impatient or frustrated, ask yourself, Am I willing to be patient with this thing that is unresolved? What would it look like for me to stop working so hard on this and trust God to work in His way, in His time? As you silence the music, how are you really? Right now in this moment, are you hurting? Is there grief? Is there anything that you are especially grateful for? Where are you experiencing life and authentic connection with God and others? And continue to meditate on Matthew 11, 28 and 30. What is it like to hear these words? Do you believe it's possible to find rest that God will lead you to? Tell God what you need, listen and act on what He tells you. As I said, I don't have a printout for you, but it will be online tomorrow. Even before the video, you can just go online. There's a button where you go to online messages, and it says Practicum for this week, and you can build and download that. That will be on tomorrow morning. Okay? So I encourage you to keep journeying through solitude and silence. My prayer is that the minute turns to 3, turns to 5, and just keeps growing, so that we daily encounter God, to hear from Him, so that we can move and engage this world and experience Him transforming us from the inside out. Kevin is now going to come and give us, I don't know where the mic is that Jen had. Okay. Kevin's going to come and give us instructions. The one instruction he might know, or in case lunch is at 12, and there will probably be instructions on how we engage that. I don't know for Leah. For lunch, are we lining up or just going in?
I would go in, sit down, and we'll call you up.
Okay, so there's your instruction for lunch. Lunch is at 12. Kevin's now going to describe what's happening the rest of the day.
All right. So as Steve was talking, thanks Steve for leading us. You guys leading us in music, that was fantastic. Really appreciate that. One of the biggest stealers of my solitude is anxiety. And the chief reason why I have anxiety is because of the unknown in my life. And that's why it's so important to have events like this that we're having today, because we're instructed to look back. If we question the goodness of God, we're said we need to look back and see what He's done in the past. Like if you're questioning whether you're going to starve to death today, look back and ask if you've ever starved to death before, right? So the interesting thing about today is that we're going to take some time and we're going to look at what's happened over the last 25 years. And we're going to do that in a service, just an anniversary service at 4 o'clock today. And I want to encourage you to come. I've kind of scoured through a bunch of old